With the 11th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Ben Roethlisberger, quarterback, University of Miami.
I don't know how to put into words what the game of football has meant to me and what a blessing it has been. While I know with confidence I have given my all to the game, I am overwhelmed with gratitude for all it has given me. A boy from Findlay, Ohio with NFL dreams, developed in Oxford at Miami University, blessed with the honor of 18 seasons as a Pittsburgh Steeler and a place to call home. The journey has been exhilarating, defined by relationships and fueled by a spirit of competition. Yet the time has come to clean up my locker, hang up my cleats, and continue to be all I can be to my wife and children. I retire from football, a truly grateful man. First and foremost, I need to thank the Lord for all the many blessings He has bestowed on me. To my wife Ashley, our children Benjamin, Bailey, and Bodie, you lift and inspire me and give my life purpose. I am so thankful for your love and support. I love you so much. To my parents and sister, every step of the way, your support and love has driven me to be the best and never give up. To the Rooney family, the Tull family, Coach Tomlin, Coach Cowher, and all of the coaches who have poured into me, the incredible people on every level that make the Pittsburgh Steelers a special organization. Thank you for believing in me and allowing me to battle with you in pursuit of excellence. To all of my teammates and the endless friendships that I have gained, I appreciate you and our shared commitment to wearing the black and gold with pride and dignity. Putting that jersey on every Sunday with my brothers will always be one of the greatest joys of my life. To Steeler Nation, the best fans in all of sport, thank you for accepting and supporting me as your quarterback over the years. Football has been a gift, and I thank God for allowing me to play it, surrounding me with great people and protecting me through to the end. With love and honor.
And with that video posted on social media, Ben Roethlisberger announcing his retirement from the game of football. And joining us now with that breaking news, Jonathan Jones, our senior NFL reporter. You saw the video. It's making the rounds now. JJ, what are your thoughts about Big Ben?
Yeah, obviously not any sort of surprise all the time that he took there in his last game at Heinz Field at the end of the season, everything that went into that final playoff game. We all knew that Big Ben was, that this was going to be his last season. He was not going to play anywhere else if somewhere else wanted him, that was not going to be the case. And so he decided not to drag this out and go ahead and post that retirement video today. But we're talking about one of the all-time greats. When you look at where his numbers rank among the all-time quarterbacks, you know, he's top 5, top 6 in plenty of categories, including the important ones. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. That's the most important one. So didn't just do it once, but did it twice, and did it with 2 different head coaches, and among the all-time league leaders in playoff wins. One of the toughest, most durable guys that's played in the NFL, and it's sort of an end that we've seen coming now for some time, not just in the past month or so, but you know, none of us would have been surprised if it had happened last year. But he came out in 2021, and you know, listen, it was sometimes a struggle to see him out there on the field. However, in the fourth quarter, he got the job done. We're talking about 6 fourth-quarter comebacks, 7 game-winning drives. Plenty of quarterbacks out there this year who didn't have any, including a rival in Cleveland, Baker Mayfield. So when the job needed to get done, he got it done. It may not have been pretty there at the end, but still got the Steelers into the playoffs in his final year. And really, without question, Tommy, in 5 years from now, he's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer in Canton, Ohio.
No doubt about that from me. I'm with you there as well. You talk about it being maybe not pretty at the end at times, his rookie year. Not always pretty, game manager. How would you describe sort of the difference between the first and second Super Bowl and sort of the stages of his quarterback evolution?
Well, you go back to when he came out of Miami of Ohio, and he was just this big, indestructible quarterback, and he was sort of the beginning of what we have come to see. You know, he wasn't always the fastest guy, but you talk about a dual threat. He was a threat running the football. Without question, he could stand in the pocket and deliver every throw. He could move outside and inside of the pocket. He could go past the line of scrimmage, and good luck tackling him, even if he didn't use his legs in that way very often. But getting that first Super Bowl win, with Bill Cowher, and then coming back with Mike Tomlin and getting that second Super Bowl win, the domination of the AFC North, having only losing 2 games, I believe, to the Cleveland Browns, having winning records against the Baltimore Ravens, against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's an immediate measuring stick of your success. And you mentioned never having a losing season, dealt with injuries throughout his career, but between the white lines, it's hard to really think of another quarterback who dealt with as many injuries, who was as consistent for about 15 of his first seasons there in the NFL. The last 3 or so years, he really changed his game. He started passing much, much shorter. For the first 15 or so years of his career, he was averaging about 8 yards per attempt. In the last 3 years, it was somewhere around 6 to 6.2 yards per attempt. Much more of a horizontal passing game as the arm started to go with the age, as you just wanted to get the ball in your playmakers' hands. But again, a really incredible and special football career for Ben Roethlisberger.
Part of that great clash with Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. What will you remember about that tandem, their careers, as some of them won Super Bowls? Obviously, Phillip fell a little bit short there.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to look back at that and say, was this one of the greatest classes ever? And I think we've been saying that for some time. Among the 3 of them, you have 4 combined Super Bowl championships. You mentioned Phillip, of course, not being able to get there, but 4 rings nonetheless. And it certainly stacks up with the class of 1983. I think, this class that had Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson may very well have something to say about it, 15 years down the road, as we're talking about their ultimate retirements and their place in Canton, Ohio. But it is certainly right up there. Of course, Ben Roethlisberger, for all the greatness on the field, obviously off the field was not without controversy. Some very serious allegations that resulted in a suspension for him from the league over the early part of his career. Was able to avoid that controversy in the second half of his career. But any time you're talking about retirement, anytime you're talking about the person and the successes, it's only fair to mention the other parts of the story, the very serious parts of the story as well. So that will be a part of Ben Roethlisberger's story, no question about it. But we're just talking about football. We're talking about a guy who became and learned how to become a leader and took his lumps there as he tried to navigate what that was, and being a representative for a very proud city and a proud franchise, and working with one of the best head coaches, 2 of the best head coaches to ever do it, in Bill Cowher, and then obviously the majority of his career with Mike Tomlin. Navigating egos, as I think that we have seen certainly with Antonio Brown, developing and changing his play style over the year, and again, overcoming and battling all of those injuries, as well as, of course, being a winner. Those are all things that you have to talk about when you talk about Ben Roethlisberger.
One more before I let you go. You bring up the word navigating. What do the Pittsburgh Steelers do now? How do they navigate life post-Big Ben?
Well, again, this is something that they should have been planning for the past year. Ben Roethlisberger took a very significant pay cut in order to get the team under the cap, in order to stay with the team, about 11 or so months ago. And so they have been planning for this to be Ben Roethlisberger's final season. I think it would be a failure by the Pittsburgh Steelers to go into the 2022 season in Week 1. If Mason Rudolph is their starting quarterback, that should elicit some groans and sighs from the Steeler faithful. They have, I believe, the number 20 overall pick by virtue of making the playoffs but being eliminated early. And so is that going to be too low to get a guy that you want to start in Week 1? Perhaps. I'm not sure that there's any pick in this year's draft that is high enough to get a guy that you want to start in Week 1. But this is a very desirable location. You have a fantastic defense. You have some wide receivers. You have a running back. They're going to have to figure out the offensive line that seemed to come together. And you have a fantastic head coach that guys want to play for, perhaps the preeminent players coach in the NFL in Mike Tomlin. So do they want to trade some draft capital in order to secure the likes of a Russell Wilson? Perhaps Aaron Rodgers can't make it to Denver. Maybe he looks at the Yinzers out in Pittsburgh. All of that may be pie in the sky right now, but I just find it hard to believe, even though Mike Tomlin has voiced his support for Mason Rudolph, and why would he not, because he is on the roster, I just find it hard to believe that this team that just made the playoffs, that's never had a losing season, doesn't know what it already has in Mason Rudolph, They have to understand that it's going to be difficult for them to make it back to the postseason with him, and they should be very, very aggressive here in what is believed to be Kevin Colbert's final year as general manager in securing a replacement, a successor for Ben Roethlisberger in the form of a veteran quarterback.
JJ, certainly appreciate providing us with the notes and the insight on Big Ben's retirement. Big Ben, of course, taking to social media, making the announcement himself. Speaking of social media, the Steelers putting this out for everything you've done for the organization, the city, and for the game. Hashtag #ThankYou7. All right, we're going to take a very quick break, but when we come back, the Big Ben retirement conversation continues. Pete Prisco will join us on the other side, CBS Sports HQ.
The 2004 draft is one of the most memorable drafts in NFL history. Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger were the top 3 quarterbacks taken off the board. While there was drama at the top, Big Ben waited patiently. But he didn't have to wait long. The Steelers drafted Roethlisberger with the 11th overall pick.
Hey, Coach. Absolutely. All right, Coach, thanks. Take care.
What's the deal?
That's good. Let's turn it in right now.
Black and Gold gambled on Big Ben, hoping he could lead the franchise back to Super Bowl glory. It turned out to be one of the best decisions the Steelers have ever made. Roethlisberger went 13-0 in his first year as a starter, earning Offensive Rookie of the Year. He topped that the next year, leading the Steelers to their 5th Super Bowl championship. It was soon after that Roethlisberger would face some real adversity. He was seriously injured in an off-season motorcycle accident. He had an emergency appendectomy right before the season started and then had the worst year of his young career. Then the Steelers took a chance on a first-time head coach in Mike Tomlin. That revived Roethlisberger's career. Big Ben made his first Pro Bowl in his 4th season, and after agreeing to a $100 million contract, led the Steelers to their 6th Super Bowl victory, making the most clutch throw of his career, a back of the end zone pinpoint strike to Santonio Holmes that proved to be the difference. 2 years later, Roethlisberger and the Steelers fell short in the Super Bowl. But it's been Big Ben that has been the consistent driving force for Pittsburgh. The Steelers have never had a losing season since he was drafted. It wasn't always pretty, but when the game was on the line, Big Ben delivered way more often than not. And while his illustrious 18-year NFL career is now over, his legacy is forever secure. A legacy that will be recognized and celebrated in Canton.
Our thanks to Hakeem Dermish for kind of giving us the timeline for Ben Roethlisberger, who took to social media today to announce his retirement. We got Pete Prisco joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Pete, what do you think about Big Ben? Not necessarily surprising, but it is official.
Yeah, it's not surprising. He's been talking about this, and we had this, don't forget, we had the retirement game about a month ago in Pittsburgh, so it's not a shock. It was time for him to walk away. He wanted to spend more time with his family. You get it. You understand it. Is he the same player he was early in his career? Absolutely not. His skills have eroded. He can't drive the ball down. He couldn't drive the ball down the field like he used to be able to, but he's had a magnificent career, and his next stop in terms of football will be in Canton.
And when you think about that career, let's just say I'm asking you 2 or 3 things to cherry pick out of that. How do you best describe that 18-year career for Big Ben?
Well, I think it's tough. I mean, that's the thing that stands out about him. You can, close your eyes, and if somebody says, bring up a Ben Roethlisberger play, you're going to think about him bouncing off 2 or 3 defensive linemen who are bigger than him and getting outside the pocket and keeping his head up and making a throw down the field. And early in his career, he had the big arm. Remember, his yards per attempt was way up early in his career when he was a guy who could sling the ball down the field. And there's kind of a misnomer about his first Super Bowl in that he was a game manager and that he wasn't a guy who could throw the ball. In that playoff run, he had 7 touchdown passes and 1 pick leading into the Super Bowl that year. Now, he threw 2 in the Super Bowl, but he actually had a big part of making that team get to the Super Bowl with his ability to throw the football. And I remember being in Denver when they won that game to get there and coming off the field and talking to some of those Steeler players, and they were just in awe of what he did that year. So I think when you look at him, he's one of those guys that probably gets the reputation as being a gunslinger, wild at times, tough to harness. But when you really look at it, he was a much better passer, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for.
Enjoyed nothing but winning seasons. Of course, a couple of Super Bowl victories, one Super Bowl loss. He paired with Bill Cowher, early Hall of Famer, Mike Tomlin for the rest of his career. That dynamic, how would you best describe the Mike Tomlin-Ben Roethlisberger tandem?
Well, Mike Tomlin's a great coach, and will soon be, when he retires, he will be a Hall of Fame coach as well. And I think the dynamic was outstanding. I mean, they seemed to have a great relationship. The problem with Ben over his career is he didn't always have a great relationship with his offensive coordinators. And there were times where he didn't like the offense and the way they played. And in most of those situations, he was right. I mean, they didn't always cater to what he could do, and I think that was a problem at times. But the relationship between Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger was always one of respect. And one thing about Ben Roethlisberger, as he matured and got older, he became a different player in the building. I mean, early on in his career, and Steelers players would tell you this, and I think a lot of the guys that still play with him would tell you that he had morphed and changed early in his career. He was kind of difficult, and he was kind of cocky and kind of arrogant. He'd probably tell you that. And he became a different guy in terms of what he was inside the building and what he was to his teammates. And I think that maturity really helped him.
Hall of Famer, Pete?
Oh, slam dunk. First ballot. I mean, he's 5th all-time in passing yards. He's 8th all-time in touchdown passes. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's a walk-in. I don't think there should be any question about it. And he will be, by the way. I don't sit here and say, oh, that guy should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. When you have those kind of numbers and 2 Super Bowl rings, you're going to Canton, and he should go to Canton. Great player, Hall of Fame player for sure.
All right, so no doubt for you there, but there's going to be doubts about what the Steelers do without Big Ben. What do you think about Pittsburgh at the moment as they tackle this offseason now without their quarterback?
It's funny. All these teams in the league right now, all desperate to find the franchise quarterback. You're talking about Pittsburgh, Denver, Washington. They're all good teams that if they find the right quarterback can be Super Bowl contenders next season. And who's that going to be? Is it Mason Rudolph in Pittsburgh? I don't think so. Is it Dwayne Haskins? I don't think so. They have to find a quarterback. Maybe they draft one. Maybe they develop one. They should find a way, if they're going to draft one, to get Kenny Pickett. That would be a great pick, right there out of Pitt. He's right in their backyard. It would really make sense for them if they want to go that route. If they want to try and get a veteran, nose around Russell Wilson. See what you can have to give up to try and get him to come to Pittsburgh. I don't think he's leaving Seattle, but why not ask? Same for Aaron Rodgers. If Deshaun Watson's situation gets cleared up, nose around about that. Because there's going to be teams looking for quarterbacks. Washington, same situation. Carolina, another team, same situation. Denver, clearly, and they hope they can get Rodgers now that they hired Nate Hackett. But I think all these teams are going to be fighting for the quarterbacks. And sometimes, if you can't get one of those veterans, you better be prepared to draft one and develop them. And I think this is a decent quarterback class. Not a great quarterback class, but a decent one.
So when you surveyed, you brought up all the teams, and we talked about Denver this morning because of the breaking news with Nathaniel Hackett. When you look at the teams that are a quote-unquote quarterback away, then, Pete, do you think Pittsburgh has the most weapons, receiver, Najee Harris? And where do you rank Pittsburgh just offensively if you're a potential quarterback going somewhere else?
Well, I think the offensive line's been an issue for them for a couple of years, but remember, they started 2 rookies last year, so they're going to be that much better next year. And I think that's been the calling card for the Steelers over their history when they've had success. They've had good offensive lines. When they've struggled, they've had bad offensive lines. And, the last couple of years, it hasn't been great. They struggled last year because they had 2 rookies starting on the offensive line. But I think both those guys, Green and Moore, the left tackle and the center, will both be good players. So it's going to be a nice mix. You have weapons outside. You have a young tight end that you like. And you have that running game. So I think Pittsburgh's one of those teams, if you get the right quarterback, they were a playoff team this year. If you get the right quarterback and learn to stop the run on defense, and they had some injuries over there this year with Tuitt and Alualu, but those guys will be back. But if you can stop the run and really put that quarterback in there and build it around him, I think you can go with a young rookie quarterback and still make a playoff push.
All right, speaking of rankings, one more, and I'll let you go on this. Ranking the 04 class. For you, Roethlisberger, Rivers, Manning, what's that going to be like for you?
That's tough for me. I mean, look, I think Rivers was the best player of the 3. But I think you have to look at the rings, and Rivers didn't get one, and Roethlisberger got 2, and Manning got 2. So if you're going to start by ranking that, I think you go Roethlisberger would be 1. Have to give it to Manning at 2 because he has the 2 rings, and he had the 2 fourth-quarter comebacks in the Super Bowl. People forget that. And then Rivers, but they're close. I mean, if you had taken Rivers and stuck him in Pittsburgh, who knows? He probably would have won 2 rings as well. So it's real close for me. I think Rivers was the better quarterback of the 3, but it's hard to rank him ahead of those 2 guys when they have the rings.
Pete Prisco there with the breaking news. Pete, certainly appreciated as always. Again, class of 04 there with Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, and now Ben Roethlisberger. All of those guys sticking on the other side of their playing careers. The numbers, the notes, as we see here again. 18 seasons with one franchise, 2 Super Bowl wins, 6-time Pro Bowler and Rookie of the Year. By the way, that led the team to most wins ever by a rookie. We're going to take another break. We've got more analysts coming up right now. The Pick Six Pod going to be joining us, including host Will Brinson and Ryan Wilson. We'll be talking about that on the other side of the break. We continue to follow breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, but it seems like a long time ago. Big Ben and Paul Tagliabue on draft night. Since then, 2 Super Bowl trophies, an 18-year career with one team, one franchise, one city. 6-time Pro Bowler Ben Roethlisberger announcing on social media today on his account that he is calling it a career. Again, the notes are staggering. Steelers have never had a losing season during his time there. The passing yards 5th all-time with more than 64,000 career passing yards for Big Ben. All right, let's keep it going. Pick Six Pod. We got the host, Will Brinson, and the super friend, Ryan Wilson. Will, I'll start with you. I don't know if you've taken to Twitter just yet on Big Ben, but what's the first thing you want to convey with the news that we learned Big Ben today?
I mean, I think it's overdue, Tommy. I thought Big Ben retired 6 weeks ago. Why are we still dealing with this? He went and did a lap around the stadium in Pittsburgh on Monday night after leaking out for like 6 days in a row that he might be thinking about stepping away. Big Ben was toast. He was done. It was over. It's finished. Hall of Fame career, of course. Multiple Super Bowls. Tons of incredible moments on the field. Some less than incredible moments off the field. A interesting in terms of when you look at him as a player. Look, the guy's a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's when it's all said and done, he's one of probably the greatest quarterback in Steelers history. But certainly not a surprise that he's officially retiring.
So I'm the resident Steelers homer on the Pick Six podcast, and probably only after BMAC, the biggest Steelers fan that we see regularly on HQ. So as Brinson noted, this is not a surprise. But here's something to think about, Tommy. Back in 2004, when the Steelers drafted Ben Roethlisberger, going into the draft process, Bill Cowher reportedly liked Phillip Rivers. Shawn Andrews, the guard out of Arkansas, was also in consideration as that pick. And Dan Rooney, the chairman, rest in peace, said, listen, guys, back in '83, we passed on this guy named Dan Marino to take Gabe Rivera nose tackle. Let's not make that mistake again. They took Big Ben and changed the course of that franchise, which had struggled to find a quarterback year in and year out. And Roethlisberger came in, didn't start the season. Back then, you let your rookies sit. Tommy Maddox got hurt in the second game against the Ravens, and then the Steelers went on to win 15 games and make their way to the AFC Championship, where they met the Patriots and lost that game, and that became sort of a rivalry. And we talk about the Patriots all the time, Tommy, that if not for the Patriots, how many other dynasties would there be? And there's so many great plays in Big Ben's career. One that we'll be talking about is the tackle right here on Nick Harper to save their run to the Super Bowl in 2005. And I think, I don't know where the Steelers would be without Ben Roethlisberger. And we talk about the comparisons between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Who's more important? I think it's fair to say that Big Ben was the most important person in Pittsburgh over the last 18 seasons, whether the coach was Bill Cowher or Mike Tomlin.
Because I think that, Will had alluded to, we've known about this for a month, maybe even 2. It's been hinted at and talked about as well, nearing toward the end of the season. So what's next now for Pittsburgh? Will, do you think how they attack this offseason and the draft to try to get better and get back to the postseason and another Super Bowl appearance?
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily that easy for Pittsburgh just to, figure it out and solve their quarterback problems, right? I mean, you look at some of these organizations, particularly the Chargers got lucky because they landed Justin Herbert, who has been an incredible quarterback, early in his career. But I mean, look at the Giants and where they're at. I mean, after Eli Manning, they've struggled to figure out the quarterback position. And I think Pittsburgh is, I don't want to say they're in a similar situation because Lord knows they can go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers or figure out a way to finagle Russell Wilson there. I think it's probably more likely that they look for a long-term solution at the quarterback position. Now, the question is, what does that look like? Does it come in the form of, and I mean, I'm going to make Wilson snicker here, but does it come in the form of Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins? Or is it, somebody that they go and get in the draft, like a Kenny Pickett? As you point out, Tommy, this is not a quarterback-rich draft class. You have some guys out there in terms of Sam Howell, Pickett that I mentioned before, certainly Matt Corral, but it's not like there's an easy answer for Pittsburgh here. So I think there are a lot more questions that need to be asked about the overall roster, the overall approach to what they want to do over the long haul before we can even say, all right, Pittsburgh's just going to find a quarterback and get back to the postseason.
Yeah, this is a team with a bunch of needs, and now you're in a division where we know Lamar Jackson, how good he can be, the former MVP. Joe Burrow is probably the best quarterback in the division as we sit here, and now the Steelers are somehow looking up at those two teams. All that said, the Steelers somehow found a way to finish second in the division as well. So I think Mike Tomlin is going to be an integral part of any success they have going forward, just like he was when they had Big Ben. So what happens now, and Brinson mentioned Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph, both those players will be given opportunities to win the job, and presumably one will be better than the other. It was Mason Rudolph last season. Mike Tomlin wasn't 100% committed to going with those guys, but we'll have to see what happens in their intervening weeks and months. And even if you draft a quarterback at 20, whether it's Kenny Pickett, should he be there, Malik Willis, or I don't think Sam Howell's worth taking in the first round, but the Steelers may feel differently. It's none of those guys can come in right away and compete. Matt Corral might give them the best chance. Kenny Pickett maybe the second best chance, in part because the offensive line has struggled. And in the mock drafts I do, I've had them taking offensive linemen. I've had them taking cornerbacks. They have needs there. Edge rusher. This week I had them taking Jordan Davis, the interior defensive lineman, because their run game was so terrible over the last month or so of the season. So a quarterback won't magically fix things, and we talk about fit all the time, Tom. You look at Mac Jones and the Patriots. Landing a Matt Corral or a Kenny Pickett and put him on that behind that offensive line would probably not be good for his short-term health, for sure. So there are a lot of things they need to sort out. Steelers fans would love to, rub the genie bottle and have Aaron Rodgers magically show up, but I think there's some competition now with Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach in Denver.
All right, so with Big Ben out, Kevin Colbert eventually going to be out, Mike Tomlin. I'm going to throw this to Ryan first, then Will, I'll give you a final word about Mike Tomlin overseeing maybe not a full reboot, maybe it's a reboot instead. I mean, what do we think about Mike Tomlin long term?
He's a Hall of Fame coach, as Briscoe noted in the previous segment. And look, you can talk about the importance of Big Ben, as I just have, but 2 years ago, that team went 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Doug Hodges. This year, as this team struggled with an offense and no offensive line, they went 9-7-1. And they made the playoffs, which was probably more improbable than going 8-8. So Mike Tomlin will be fine. BMAC will tell you better than anyone how much his players respect him and play hard for him and his ability to motivate those players. And I don't want to bring up Urban Meyer, but you juxtapose Mike Tomlin's effect on this team and how Urban Meyer seemed to alienate everyone in just a few months. And I think you can't underline how important that is. You can talk about game planning and in-game decisions and clock management, and that does get fans fired up at times. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to motivate those guys. And Mike Tomlin's done that every single day since he arrived in 2007. So he puts the Steelers in the best position to have success immediately in a post-Big Ben world.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin is going to do whatever. I don't want to say Mike Tomlin's going to do whatever he wants because, I mean, he is ultimately just, he's the coach. He doesn't own the Steelers, doesn't run the Steelers. But, I mean, this is a guy who hasn't lost, doesn't have a season below 500. I mean, I think if the Steelers are going on a rebuilding mission, if Mike Tomlin wants to come along and he wants to rebuild that franchise, then that's his, if that's his prerogative, then he can do it. I mean, that's really the bottom line, I think. The Steelers love Mike Tomlin. They love the passion, the energy, the leadership that he brings to that franchise, to that locker room. And there's no question he's the guy if he wants to be the guy. I mean, if he wants a sabbatical like Sean Payton, then so be it. But I think it's a no-brainer. Mike Tomlin's there until he doesn't want to be there.
Well, Ryan, certainly appreciate it. Check out the podcast, of course, the Pick Six podcast with host Will Brinson and the Super Friends. Ryan Wilson. Don't have John here, but of course, Breach alongside with it with guests like Pete Prisco, Brady Quinn. Make sure you download and follow Pick Six podcast. Download today. All right, these are the images of Ben Roethlisberger, the last time we've seen him exit the field. Showed you a lot of his draft day video. 18 years, calling it a career. When we come back, two-time Super Bowl champ and fellow teammate Brian McFadden, our guy, going to be joining us talking about his guy, Big Ben. We continue the conversation of Big Ben calling it a career. The breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. This was the second of 2 Super Bowl titles for Ben Roethlisberger. What a game that was, back and forth till the very end. Santonio Holmes making that catch, keeping his feet in, and ultimately having the Pittsburgh Steelers edge out the Arizona Cardinals in that Super Bowl. A guy that was on that team, a teammate of Ben Roethlisberger, our guy, Brian McFadden, joining us over the phone. B-Mac, what are your thoughts here on Ben Roethlisberger officially retiring today?
Oh, man, the ultimate true competitor at the quarterback position. Outstanding professional career. You talked about being a 2-time Super Bowl champion, Rookie of the Year in 2004. Look at the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round, then outplayed both quarterbacks in Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, Pro Bowl guy as well. Future first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, he did everything but live up to the billing when they drafted him in Pittsburgh. He fit what the city has been, what the city is. Hard worker, a guy that does not mind getting dirty and doing his job, and most importantly, just winning, being the ultimate team player and becoming an ultimate winner.
What can you share with us in terms of something about Big Ben, maybe a story that most people don't know, the side of Big Ben that we don't get to see maybe all the time on the field?
Big Ben got a nice hoop game. like on the court, Big Ben got a nice, smooth hoop game, Tommy. Earlier in my career in Pittsburgh during the offseason, we had a traveling basketball team. So we would travel to different cities near Pittsburgh and play different teams that were assembled together. Sometimes we would play small colleges. Sometimes we play, recreational park-like leagues. And people would come to see us to play. They would pay to see us play against these different teams. And every now and then, Big Ben would play, and when he played, the gyms were always filled to capacity. No surprise there. But Big Ben with the ball in his hand, Tommy, I mean, at the top of the key, he had a smooth stroke. He had a nice off-dribble game as well. He saw the floor well, no surprise, because he played quarterback. But he was a real talented, athletic guy, well-rounded athletic guy, not just on the football field. But I don't think a lot of people would think of Big Ben as a guy who can play basketball as well as he did. But that's the first thing now when I saw him, because, Tommy, you can kind of tell if someone can play basketball a little bit, just how they go through the layup line and go and do their layups. When I saw Big Ben in the layup line, I'm like, okay, Big Ben might have a little something. Then seeing him with the basketball in his hand with that smooth stroke, I'm like, yo, Big Ben is an all-around athlete. So I think that's something that most people might not think about outside of Big Ben playing quarterback. Big Ben is a smooth basketball player.
Yeah, that's surprising. I thought that maybe he's just going to be the low block guy, not a lot of movement, but what you described was a guy that had handles and moves for a quarterback that we saw on the field, able to sling it around. You were with him. You got to see him sort of at his peak and his apex physically. Obviously, you guys had so much success together. But, B-Mac, now that you're on our side of things, what have you seen from Big Ben the last 2 to 3 years? How would you describe his game at that time?
His game kind of transformed a little bit. Early in his career, especially when I was his teammate, Big Ben was my version of John Elway. I grew up a John Elway fan. He played the quarterback position a little different than everyone at that time. And Big Ben had his own style of playing quarterback during his prime years. And his ability to be elusive and make people miss. The pump fake, think about that. How many quarterbacks have you seen utilize the pump fake like Big Ben? That was his thing. And then as he got older, his mobility wasn't the same. His aggressive style wasn't the same. He had to rely more on the mental standpoint of his ball game. And he executed that to the best of his ability. And even this year, with some of the criticism that he faced, not really getting the sound protection from his offensive line, he still went out and fought. And one game that I would like to highlight for Big Ben this season, where we saw the competitor that he is and has been throughout his career, that Thursday night ball game against the Minnesota Vikings. If you look at the first half of that ball game, how they beat him up, how they sacked him, he couldn't get anything going. The entire offense couldn't get anything going. He never weathered. He stayed the course. In the second half, he came out and he was swinging. So in the first half, he was receiving all the blows. And some quarterbacks would tuck tail and be like, you know what, let's get ready for next week. In the second half, he came out swinging, and he still got hit, but he kept delivering punches as well and made that game a ball game, a tight ball game. Now, they lost, but looking at how he fought, that's the player that I always remembered. And the athletic style of play wasn't there, but the mentality was still intact. And that's something that I took away that week. Like, man, Big Ben still has it, and that dog that he has in him is still there and forever will be there.
One more before I let you go. Appreciate you joining us, B-Mac. Looking at this team now, post Big Ben, what do you think the team will do this offseason to try to get back on track for a new year?
Tommy, you got to have a quarterback. I don't care what level of football you're playing. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win. And when you don't have a quarterback, the field is not 100 yards. It's 150 yards. And sometimes, depending on how bad the quarterback is, it might be 200 yards. That's how it feels when you have to drive the length of the football field. So you got to get a quarterback. And it's going to be very, very difficult to do so based on where the Steelers are projected to draft, because they're never a team that's in a top position to draft one of these quote-unquote potential franchise-like guys, because they always do good enough to not be in a top 10 area. But they got to find a way to get a quarterback, a guy that is reliable and a guy that can instantly make the entire offense better, because they still have some answers, some questions offensively they need to answer. And it's going to be hard to be able to answer all those questions through free agency and through the draft. So they got to find a way to get a quarterback. So that's the most important thing for Pittsburgh. And I understand they're saying they may hand the keys over to Mason Rudolph. You know what I mean? And we've seen him sparingly as a starting quarterback. But if you do that, if you hand the keys over to Mason Rudolph, and just going off what we've seen from Mason throughout his professional career in a small sample size, that division is quarterback ready, the AFC North. And even with the up and down play of Baker Mayfield, people probably would rank the Pittsburgh Steelers just at the quarterback position in the division dead last if you say you're going to start Mason Rudolph. And not saying he can't evolve to be a real strong contributor, a real stout, reliable quarterback, but based on what we've seen, he's been up and down. So that's the most important thing right now for this organization. Knowing that Big Ben was going to walk away, what is next at the quarterback? Because like I said, if you don't have a quarterback, that field is no longer 100 yards, it's 150.
B-Mac, certainly appreciate it. I'm told we're not done with you yet, but we appreciate the insight on that story with Big Ben being a hoops baller. Was fantastic. Again, Ben Roethlisberger taking to social media, calling it a career, putting it out on his words and his terms, but we've hinted at this now for about a month or at least two, especially toward the end of the regular season. Last game at Heinz, last playoff game, and again, the Steelers putting this out shortly after Big Ben put out his social media post for everything you've done for the organization, the city, and for the game. #ThankYou7.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.